Hey everyone, good morning. I'm really happy to have everyone here for this session on how to make hybrid work actually work. I hope that you've had a good morning. I've been looking at some of the sessions, so I know that there's been some really, really good ones. My name is Johanna. I should start with introducing myself. I am one of the co-founders of an organizational company called The House. We've been a consultancy firm for 7 years now, but I've been working with my co-founder friends there for almost 20 years. We're working with organizational change, with team development, leadership, all of those things. And since 2015, I've been focusing on remote work and hybrid organizations. And by then, I'd been working within that area for about 10 years. And I think that when I sort of started meeting more hybrid companies, not necessarily people working from home, but companies that maybe they were collaborating from the New York office and the Sao Paulo office, or they were working the night shift and the day shift, or just having a lot of coworkers traveling, which of course gives you the same sort of effect as working from home does. You don't meet as much. There's a lot of difficulties communicating, building culture, and so on. I sort of found that to be the extreme sport of organizational building and team development and so on. And I've been totally in love with the topic since. So I'm really happy to be here. I'm really happy that you're all here. My coworker asked me today, so sort of what's on your schedule? And it's like, well, more or less, I'm having a lot of people home in my living room, and we're going to be just talking for 20 to 30 minutes about my favorite topic. So it's a very, very good day. And I'm aware when I say that we're going to be talking about my favorite topic that I will be doing a lot of the talking. But I really want to invite you to, say hi in the chat, ask questions so that we can make this session as relevant as possible for all of you. I always get a little bit nervous when we put the name on these kinds of sessions. So how to make hybrid work, which could give someone the idea that there's a right answer on exactly what to do, and that's what I'm going to deliver. But I think at this point, we've been talking about hybrid work for quite a while. I think that we all know that there's just not one size fits all. It's very much up to what kind of company you are, what kind of organization you have, who's working in it. But what we can see when we look at companies who's really successful working in a hybrid setting is that we can see some principles. We can see sort of some key things that they do. And in this session, I've tried to pick 3 that I find is sort of a common pattern over all of those companies. So that is something that you can try out. Okay. So I'm looking at the chat. Oh, lovely seeing so many people. This helps me a lot seeing that you're here. Sometimes, and that's the thing with working in a hybrid way, you can feel a little bit lonely, especially when you're sitting in your own living room. So hi, Belgrade, Paris, UK, Germany. Oh, okay. Lovely to have you here. Okay, so I've prepared a little poll for you just to sort of see where you're at when it comes to your hybrid work. How is it working for you? So if you go to the poll, you see how is hybrid working? How is hybrid work working for you? And you can answer not at all. You can answer it's sort of working, but barely. Good, but needs some tweaking. Great, thank you for asking. And I don't work in a hybrid organization. So let's see what we have. Okay. Oh, we have a lot of people thinking it's working great. Good, but needs some tweaking. Okay, so we have a bunch of people here who are quite optimistic and feel like you have it sort of starting to get the hang of it. That's great. And I see it's sort of working, but barely. More people coming in. Okay, that's good. We don't have anyone who feel that it's not working at all. So I'm going to treat you as a group who are quite positive to all of it, and we'll see what we can do there. Okay, let's get started. First, let's address the elephant in the room. Do we really have to talk about hybrid work, which is a valid question? First of all, we've been talking about it for quite some time. Since the pandemic, it's been a lot of talking, is it working or is it not working? Is it working or is it not working? Do we like it or do we not like it? When it comes to do we need to talk about hybrid work, there's also the aspect I'm sure that a lot of people have noticed, this sort of trend that's going on, that we're asking people back to the office. More and more companies, bigger and bigger companies, are sort of calling everyone back. And I want to say two things about that. First of all, yes, we see a lot of people being called back to the office, but I wouldn't call it being called back. I would call it, it's more like we're being called back and forth a little bit. It can seem like we're all being called back, but when it comes to these kind of big changes in the way we're working, it always is a back and forth movement. If we look back at other big transformations within the way we work, I mean, even industrialism, or if we look at sort of when the digital era, when internet came and all of that, it didn't happen over a day. I mean, we even said that internet was sort of a trend that was going to disappear eventually. So we always move a little bit back and forth. And if we sort of zoom out and look at the big picture, we're going to see that we are actually moving more and more towards that hybrid work is a part of the new way of working, or what's going to be what we've called the new normal for quite a while. So even if we have a feeling of we're going back, we're not really. And even there's not a lot of companies who's actually calling everyone back full time. They're calling them back for one more day a week, or even 4 days a week at the office, and maybe one flexible day. So we already see like a new standard. If we just look a couple of years back, having 1 day set where you can be at home was quite unusual, and quite an unusual benefit to have. So we do have a new normal. And the other thing I want to say about going back to the office is that I can 100% understand the inclination of wanting to take everyone back. I mean, we miss so much in how it used to be. Either miss the culture, how it felt in the office when everyone was there, or we miss how effective everything was and how easy it was when we could sort of change information a little bit quicker, or when everyone was in the same place. But we have to remember that now, when we're called back, it's never going to be exactly the same as it was. And I'm going to use a quote from one of the old Greeks. And I mean, bear with me, I'm going to use more modern quotes as well. But we have from Heraclitus, who said, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river and it's not the same man." And he was talking about the constant change that we talk quite a lot about. And the river representing sort of the society that we're in now, the work society. It's not the same as it was only like 5 or 6 years ago when we were at the office full time. We're now in a situation where everything around us have changed. We know that we have the tools. Everything developed a lot faster during the pandemic due to that we really needed it. So we're in a society where everyone is accepting of a flexible work life. Everyone, there's tools to use it. And we as people are not the same. We've lived years now with more flexibility, more freedom, more autonomy, whether we've used it to sleep in a couple of days a week, or if we've used it to move somewhere else, or pick up our kids earlier from school. We've had that freedom and we've had that flexibility. And now if we're being called back to work, we enter the office again as people who's lost something. Worst case, something that the organization has taken from us. So now we're in a situation where everyone in the office knows that it's possible, and they know how it feels to have it, and now they don't. So if you are a company who calls everyone back, it's not gonna be the same. You're gonna have to adjust. You're gonna have to either pay more, or you're gonna have to be prepared to maybe lose some people who's already made changes that makes it impossible for them to be in the office full time. And I know that a lot of organizations think that, okay, so we'll lose some people, but we also have to remember that we'll lose the best ones, because there's the ones who can make demands and get a flexible workplace in other places. So it's important to remember that. So the question is, do we really have to talk about hybrid work? Yeah, we really, really need to talk about hybrid work, because it is where we're moving, and it is going to be worth for us to keep on developing it, so that we become more effective, so that we can use all of the opportunities that it means. And also, not to be a Debbie Downer, but we're also sort of living in an uncertain world at the moment. So being able to be flexible is going to be one of our sort of greatest strengths at some point. Okay, so that's why we need to talk about it. But what we've talked about when it comes to hybrid work has also changed during the last couple of years. Looking back, let's say pandemic and just before pandemic, a lot of what we talked about when it came to how do we make hybrid work was focused on the individual. So it was how do we make every coworker, everyone who's working at the office, take responsibility to perform. How do we make sure that they actually work from home was a question for a long time, that they don't just lay around watching Netflix, but they actually do their work. How do we make sure that they stay motivated and practice a self-leadership? It was a lot of focus about how do we make sure that the leaders are capable of leading in this new sort of environment, and how do we make sure that teams are effective enough. The last couple of years, the topic, sort of the focus have changed a little bit. So we're more and more now talking about, okay, so what's the organization's responsibility? And I think this comes from us becoming a little bit more sort of, okay, it's here to stay. This is the way that we're going to work. Now we as an organization need to make sure that it's possible for the individuals and for the teams and for the leaders to actually do this kind of work. The structures needs to be in place to make it possible at all. So we'll look at more of sort of how can we make sure that we provide the right tools, how can we support the structure, sort of guidelines and expectations, and how do we enable culture. We're going to talk a bit more about culture because it's one of those things that are maybe the most important thing when we work in a hybrid way. So how do we build a culture of trust and accountability that allows that kind of autonomy? For those of you who are here and really want to talk about the individual's responsibility, I'm sorry, we won't focus so much on that today. But I want to say that I did release a book a couple of years ago, Closeness at a Distance, How to Lead and Collaborate in a Remote Way. So if that's your big interest, you can look at that book, or you can send me an email afterwards and we'll continue the conversation about that. What we will be talking more about today is sort of the organizational perspective on it. And I've taken inspiration and some content from my new book that I've co-written with Moa Amalot, that came out into the sort of bookshelves just last week. So it's a brand new book. And I've been really, really sort of struggling with, okay, so 3 principles from this book that I want to share with you. There's a lot of things. What we do in this book is that we look a lot at sort of what the biggest challenges that we see in the hybrid workplace. So everything from culture to leadership to how do we find the solutions that's perfect for us. How do we work with well-being? So there's a lot of things that sort of needs to connect. But I picked 3, and the first one is a little bit overwhelming. It's really big, and it's so I'm thinking that we'll just rip off the Band-Aid and start with that one. And the first sort of principle is do everything at once. And I know that this sounds big and maybe not very comfortable. And for those of you who heard me talk about this topic before, you might also think that it sounds a little bit like the opposite of what I usually say, since I'm a fan of, take it slow, small steps, don't make it too big. But I'm going to explain what I mean with doing everything at once. And this comes down to that when we start designing and building and switching into becoming a hybrid organization, I mean, that's a really, really complex question. There are so many layers of it. It affects everything. And in an organization, everything is connected as well, right? So if we switch something up here, something down here is going to get affected. And we might not be able to, we don't know before we do it exactly what's going to happen. So when something is that complex, what we do as humans, and it's totally natural, and of course we do it, is that we simplify. We make the question a little bit easier. And that's why we see a lot of companies who might sort of ignore the topics of culture and leadership and the big organization. And instead, we have discussions like, should we be in the office on Wednesdays or Thursdays? Should it be 2 days or 3 days? Quite simple questions to handle when it's actually something else that we need to talk about. But we can handle complexity. We're very complex people. We're very intelligent people. And of course, we can handle that kind of complexity. And I'm going to show you sort of a framework that I've seen a lot of companies use and that we write about in the book as well. that is a way of sort of looking at, okay, so if we're going to do everything at once, how do we divide this up? There we go. So when we look at this, when we look at the organization, there's a couple of different things we can look at and accept, because acceptance is a big thing here. We need to accept this is complex. We do not have control. All we can do is that we can sort of start experimenting a little bit. And I think that acceptance, that should be a whole point of your own, because if you can accept that this is complex, it's not going to be easy, it's going to take some time, then you're sort of one half of the race already. So, but sort of what we can do is that we can start to look at the fact that this kind of change is going to affect individuals, every individual in the organization, and it's going to change for the collective. It's going to sort of affect both teams, the whole organization, all teams on all levels. So individual change and collective change. We can also divide it into internal and external change. So internal change being how we feel about things, our motivations, our feelings about things. And the external things that we can touch and see, and sort of the outside world. So inner world and outside. So if we look a little bit more closely to what this is, and remember you can ask questions in the channel as well. If we start looking at the internal change that's going to happen to individuals, we're going to see a lot of sort of affecting people's motivation, whether if it's that I don't want to work from home, or I find it difficult to work from home, or I don't want to go back to the office. We have a lot of motivations, and with that also feelings for the workplace, and the self-leadership. How sort of good can I handle the situation of that I need to sort of motivate myself and get a lot of things done from home. We also have the individual external perspective. So my actions, my sort of feeling of the contextual awareness, in a sense, sort of what I do, how does that affect the rest of the company? If I don't meet them, it's going to be maybe sometimes difficult to understand that how I communicate and how what I write in what channel is going to affect on other people. We then have the collective internal, which is the organizational culture, how we feel about our company, what norms we have, how we act together as a group. And we have the external collective things, which are really like organizational, sort of what systems do we have, what software do we use, do we have meeting booths, or what kind of space do we have in the physical office. The companies that I see that are really successful with their hybrid work, they try to focus on all of these at once. So it doesn't have to be big, and I still mean what I said with small steps and small actions is really important. So just making sure that you accept that all of these things are going to change, and we tweak them a little bit at once. Because if we simplify and we think that, okay, but it's probably just this organizational systems, we need to upgrade the software, we need to make sure that works. Maybe we have all of that in place, and it's crisp and it's perfect and everything should work, but we have individuals who are not motivated or don't know how to use it or don't understand why it's easier if they just do it the way they usually do, or the other way around. If we have sort of worked with the self-leadership, we have motivation, we might even have like the culture in place, people want to work, they're autonomous, they know what to do, but the systems does not support it, which is sort of going to make us move back. So try to move in all of these spaces at once, even if it's just small steps. Okay, I hope you're ready for number 2. Pick your culture wisely. Culture is one of the most important things when it comes to hybrid work. And it's one of the things that I think I hear most sort of as a complaint of why we need to go back to the office. It's just not the same anymore. And there's 2 things I want to say about culture and how you need to sort of work with it. First thing being that it seems like we think that culture is something that belongs to the physical office. That's where we build culture, that's where we live the culture, that's where we get to sort of feel all the benefits of having a good culture. But we need to remember that we have a culture in the digital workplace as well. How we talk to each other, in what kind of channels, do we talk in smaller groups, do we talk in open channels? We build a culture there as well. And, worst case scenario, we have 2 very different cultures, which sort of is that feeling of it's not the same, it feels a little bit bland these days, it's because we might have two different cultures. Meaning that, like an example could be that when we meet in the office and we have a meeting, we sit around a table, we look each other in the eyes, where we don't have our screens up, we sort of do what we were supposed to do, we small talk. But when we have a digital meeting, we might have the cameras off. There's one person sort of leading the meeting and just presenting information, and then we move out. So two very different cultures, when what we need to do is to see it as one culture and try to build it as one culture. And this brings me to the other thing with culture, which is that I hear a lot of the quote that I just mentioned, sort of it's not the same. And it is a little bit, but we do expect that when we move from the office to a hybrid setting, that we're going to have the same culture with us, that it's going to be the same. But remember that culture is a very organic thing. It's something that grows depending on what we do every day. So it's like thinking that if we have a flower that we've sort of planted inside, and we have it in this kind of pot and this kind of soil, and it gets this amount of sunlight, and then we move it outside and we expect it to behave the exact same way. It won't, because the context and everything around it will be different. So the good thing about that is that we're in charge of what kind of sort of soil and light and how we water that plant. We're in charge of all of that. And the culture that we build, it's built on things that we do every day, behaviors we show, things we do, how we interact with each other. So we build the culture. We don't only build the culture, but the things that we do, but we also build with the worst behaviors that we accept. So we can decide what do we want and what do we not want in this new culture that we build. We can build the systems and the structures and make it easier to behave that way. And the companies that I see that work really well with the hybrid way is that they are very aware of what kind of culture it is that they're investing in. They see what is the hybrid gap? What is it that we lose when we go hybrid? So they focus in making sure that they have an extra amount of energy going into that. And that could be building a culture about learning. We know that we're more difficult to learn when we don't meet. Junior don't meet seniors. We don't talk about the mistakes that happen in every day, so we don't learn from them. So making sure that we have systems and structures of when do we talk about mistakes? How do we connect? Do we have a mentor program between junior and seniors, for an example? Or when it comes to psychological safety, that one of the earlier speakers today talked about as much as well, which is really a key thing when it comes to the hybrid workplace. Because if we don't have psychological safety in the group, we won't be able to say when it's not working. We won't be able to come with new ideas that will make it better. We will keep all of that to ourselves. So how can we in a hybrid workplace actually work with the psychological safety in a good way? And there's a lot of tips and hands-on tips in the book as well. But I think that we can sit down and figure out how do we do it? Is it about talking about certain things in the meetings? Is it about spending the days at the office actually getting to know each other and building the trust? And the last one being a culture of how to thrive in change. When we work with a hybrid workplace, like I said, it's going to be acceptance of that. We're not going to get it right away because it's too complex for that. We're going to have to try out things and experiment and evaluate. And if we can build a culture where we all have a sense of why we're doing this, why is it important that it always change, where we have a structure of where we have safety in our team, so we feel that yes, things are changing, but I know my colleagues and we support each other when things around us change, then we're going to have a really thriving culture that also supports us in becoming better at what we're doing. Okay. I'm moving forward because I'm looking at the clock. So I'm sorry if I'm speaking really fast, but there's a lot of things I want to say. Number 3 is a quick one. Give the leaders what they need to be great. And remember that in a hybrid organization, everyone is a leader. We do need to invest in our leaders. Being a leader in a hybrid organization, it looks a lot like the same thing as being a leader in another organization. And in many areas it is, but there are some things that are quite different. So even the best of leaders might feel like that they want to lean in a little bit of micromanagement because we're leading things, we're being judged on things, we get our salary by making sure that we deliver and that our teams deliver. And in a situation where we can't see them, we can't follow up in the same way that we might want, it's very easy to start to micromanage and call in a little bit too often and try to sort of have people spend a lot of time on reporting and what they do, when the things that we actually need to do as leaders is to work on autonomy and sort of handling our own need for control in order to support others to be more autonomous and work more on their own with their teammates. So, and I know I had this boss once who usually said that if you ask a person who sells tomatoes what the answer is, it would always be that tomatoes is the solution. And I do understand that I work with leadership education and sort of those things, and that I say that that's important. I know that that could be questioned a little bit, but this is not something that you need external help from. It can be supporting leaders to sort of have time to reflect together. How do you do things? What's worked for you? This is not working for me. To make sure that they have an internal learning of how to be good hybrid leaders. And remember, again, everyone is a leader, because when I sit at home and I work, I need to focus on my own leadership, on how do I make sure that even if my motivation is low, I go out and find the things that I want. Okay, we're running out of time. I have one thing that I want to say as a number 4. I'm going to be quick about it. Enjoy. We're making history here in one way. The things that we do today when we form the hybrid workplace, I mean, we're in such a big paradigm shift here. So the decisions that we make and all the things that we do, it's actually shaping some things. I mean, enjoy this. I was like this big history buff when I was a kid. And I was like, oh, what if you could be there with sort of, one moment it was knights and princesses, and the other one it was a revolution of some kind. And we're here now. We're changing things. So sort of lean into it and be happy of being here. Here's a quick Q&R to the book if you want it. We have 4 minutes. I'm going to go into the Q&A and see what we find here. Any tips where companies successfully increase their number of days in the office? Oh, I wish I could say yes. I'm actually thinking about doing a lecture on, or sort of a webinar or some sort on this, because no, I don't see that. And I think there are things, if we want to go back to the office, there are things that we can do. A lot of working with change management in a very sort of conscious way, making sure that everyone is aware of why are we doing this. And I think that a lot of companies skip this part because they're not really sure why they're doing it. They just know that it's not working the way it is. And instead of sort of fixing what it is that's not working, they bring people back. So, but I think that we can do things better, but no, sorry. How do you, let's see. What are the biggest mistakes companies make when implementing hybrid work models? I think that the biggest mistakes is that they do these big plans. They sit down and they do big plans and strategies and looking at the future, and then they present it. This is how we're working now, and we have a big workforce that's not being asked. I mean, the people in the company, they're the ones who know best how it works for you, because they're the ones who's doing the work every day. So not having enough involvement from your employees, and not saying that the employees should decide exactly what it looks like, but you have so much information there. So sort of involve, make small changes instead, sort of tweaking a little bit, making sure that everyone feels heard, that their knowledge is being used, and that they are also in charge. It's easy to sort of just, here's the change, now you do it. It takes more energy to sort of, okay, what changes do we need to do? You're sort of responsible of also tweaking and experimenting, and we're learning as we go along. But for the ones who do that, I see it like it's big difference. We do not like being changed. We like being a part of it. That is all the time we have. Please, here is my email. If you don't feel that I didn't have time to look at all of the questions, but send them my way, and we can continue the discussion either in a meeting or I'll answer by email. Lovely seeing you here. Please enjoy the next session. I'm going to run straight into it. Have a good day, everyone.